What's going on, YouTube? We're back at it for another video, and today we've got that big patch day for Helldivers 2. We've got more than a few changes here. We're going to be going through them really quickly, giving a brief overview, and then if you'd like to see any of these changes live, I'll be testing these out throughout the day. Hit that link down in the description below. Follow me over at Twitch. We'll be streaming, answering any questions, and just moving through each one of these and making sure each one of these changes has benefited us in the long run. There's more than a few interesting changes, so we're just going to go through and key highlight some of the better changes here, and then later on I'll be doing a huge breakdown video after testing each one of these and giving all the details on what are the best new weapons, the best new stratagems, support weapons. There's a whole lot of changes here, and hopefully a lot of them going to be for the betterment of the game. With that being said, let's get straight into it. Now, something interesting that did happen is the Liberator Concussive now has a drum magazine of 60 rounds. I wish this would have been put onto something like the Liberator and Liberator Carbine, as more than likely the Liberator Concussive is not going to really benefit from this, as the #1 drawback to the Liberator Concussive was its rate of fire, but this should be interesting, and we'll be checking this out later on. On top of that, the Tenderizer did get 5 more rounds per magazine. It's nice. It's not exactly going to push it any higher than what it was before. It was already one of those S-tier assault rifles, and we do get 1 more magazine with it. So it's beneficial, but it's still one of those moments where I wish this had at least 45 rounds in the magazine. But it's still a buff at the end of the day. And the Breaker has now come back to its original form with a little bit more stagger damage, and then on top of that, the Breaker Spray and Pray should be pretty interesting now. It's got its total damage increase from 192 to 240, so now it does actually deal quite solid damage in comparison to something like the Incendiary Breaker, and it has a duckbill muzzle now giving it a horizontal spread with less vertical, so it should be just kind of like clearing across the horizon and be something that should actually be pretty solid at crowd control towards the Terminate, so we'll be testing that out later on. Just after that, the Scythe now cools down a bit faster, and it's got a scope change. Hopefully this makes it even more pinpoint and easy to read, as they did remove recoil, and it does set enemies on fire faster, so maybe possibly the laser builds are going to be even stronger than what they were before. I've already got a video on one of those builds that I've made previously, so if you'd like to check that out on the channel or possibly see some of this content in the future, hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more of that Helldivers 2 content coming in the future, but laser weapons may be on a whole nother level. And just after that, one of my favorite changes, the crossbow might be fully back in action with its explosive radius increased by 50% and the explosive damage increased all the way up to 350. This may be absolutely devastating at crowd control and being able to take down chargers and bile titans with this type of damage, as well as having that capability of closing up those bug holes or fabricators. The crossbow may actually be worthwhile now, especially at the expense of its fire rate and small magazines. But just after that, we do have the Eruptor now back in action with shrapnel, and hopefully the shrapnel is going to be maybe not as powerful as the shrapnel we had before, as that was definitely super overpowered. But this one may be somewhere in the same ballpark, but not to the same level as deleting a heavily armored tank with 2 shots to the just shooting the back end of it. But now we do have some type of shrapnel that's similar to the explosive from the grenade itself, and it will have an increase to its overall explosive radius, but the explosive damage was decreased down to 225, but with that shrapnel damage of 110 and apparently a set amount of 30 projectiles, this should be pretty interesting and bringing the Eruptor more in line with what its original state was without having that same overpowered feeling from it, but still feeling like a devastating primary. And just after that, we do have the Liberator Penetrator going up from 45 damage to 60. Hopefully this brings this in line with being something of a solid weapon, and one that you don't just mag dump an entire magazine into a Devastator and don't even finish it off. I hope this really brings it in line, but we'll have to do some testing with this later. Now, the Diligence went up with its damage from 125 to 165 and durable damage from 32 to 42. Diligence may be one of those, if you're really good with aim and you're working against the automatons, you may be able to just be one-tapping those Devastators really quickly. The fire rate on this was already something that was really desirable and something that was like a counter sniper that was decent for the Terminate with how quick you could aim and fire. So more than likely, if you're pretty solid with your aim, the Diligence might be one of those marksman rifles that's more up your alley, especially now that it does have the capability of one-shotting Devastators. But what got even better is the counter sniper Diligence going up from damage from 140 to 200, durable damage increase from 14 to 50, and stagger force increase from 15 to 20. This is basically what I was asking for, even though it's not quite on the same level of the marksman rifle I really wanted. But this is definitely right about in the ballpark of what I wanted, and I cannot wait to test this. This may be an absolute S tier versus the automatons now, and maybe it's possible this could be utilized against the Terminid with that increase of damage and with that rate of fire to possibly even work alongside with some type of sniper build, since the anti-material rifle also got buffed, but we'll talk about that here in a moment. Now, one thing to talk about really quickly is the Blitzer might have gotten a nerf. I'm not 100% on this. We'll be testing this one out pretty soon. Now has a weak stun effect that builds up per shot on its targets. If this means that this no longer stuns the Stalker immediately, I'm going to be very upset. This is going to be a nerf, and it's going to be a detriment to the Blitzer. It was definitely the most dominant weapon, or the most dominant primary weapon against the Terminid, and without that stun effect, if it's not there, it may be still pretty powerful, but I mean, if I can't build that up in just 2 shots, especially against a Stalker, it's going to diminish its value overall. But just after that, Torture, damage increased by 50%. The Flamer mechanics, we're finally back in action with flames. They're going to be burning through that armor just like they were before, and the increase to armor penetration from 3 to 4. Now this is basically across every one of the flame weapons. The Crisper also gets this damage increase as well. I already loved the Crisper before, but now that it has 50% increase to its damage and armor penetration going up to 4, the Torture, the Crisper, the Flamethrower, they're probably going to be extremely dominant. We'll be making a pyro build here in the coming future, and especially with that orbital napalm barrage, flames are probably going to be the most dominant force against the Terminid, and it's just going to be an absolute good time. So hit that subscribe button. We got plenty more of those loadouts coming in the future for Helldivers too. And another thing to state is the Dagger actually did get its damage increased up to 250, along with removed recoil, slower heat, and sets enemies on fire faster. So the laser build, again, they may be extremely powerful now, and lasers may be even more dominant against something like the automatons as well, considering they are pinpoint accurate. And if you can aim and hit for some of those weak spots on the Devastators, the Dagger, the Scythe, or even the laser cannon, they are absolutely destroying those Devastators. This may be the thing that brings it in line to be an absolute S tier build versus the automatons. Now let's get into the support weapons. The grenade launcher got another buff. I love the grenade launcher. If you've been on my channel, you know this, and it's got an explosive radius increase slightly, as well as getting an additional magazine, which it desperately needed. I wish I got 2 or 3 more magazines, but this is going to be something that really affects it and benefits it in the long run. As well as, like I said before, the lasers going up. The laser cannon is now even more powerful, and now may be even more beneficial against the Terminid because it now damages Chargers, Biotitans, Impalers, and Hulks. Well, it already damaged Hulks before, but maybe now it's just damaging the main body of the Hulks. But the big thing is the Chargers, Biotitans, and Impalers now taking damage from the laser cannon more effectively, melting some of that armor off, and now having removed recoil, sets enemies on fire faster, and cooldown is slightly faster. This just makes it even better and brings it in line with possibly being that S+ tier of a support weapon that's good for both sides of the fight now and not just the automatons. As well as the Arc Thrower getting back to its range of 55, now has a moderate stun effect, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this actually means that it can stun Hulks again. That would be absolutely amazing, and it jumps additional times, making it even better at that crowd control and durable damage increase from 50 to 100. So hopefully that means it'll take down Hulks even faster than what it was doing before, especially if you're aiming towards that faceplate and may be able to arc through that, deal quite a bit of that durable damage, and just take them down with only a few of those arcs. But we'll be testing that out here soon. The railgun's just broken right now. More than likely, it's going to be 1 to 2 shotting just about everything. I mean, this thing is just going to be rolling around, bringing everybody down with that durable damage of 225, fully overcharged. If you're doing this in unsafe mode, it's got another 100% increase to its damage. You're going to be popping things left and right. More than likely, it's going to be an absolute good time, and I cannot wait to test this one out. Now, as well, the Stalwart ended up getting a damage increase, durable damage increase, and stagger increase. It was already a powerhouse support weapon when it came down to crowd control versus the Terminid, and now it's even better. Sadly enough, the machine gun feels like it might be getting left in the dust, as all it got was stagger force increase from 15 to 20, whereas the heavy machine gun has stagger increase to 25 and can now deal damage towards Chargers, Biotitans, and Impalers, and Hulks. So it's one of those moments where it's kind of like, why would I ever choose the machine gun when I've got these other 2 great options for 2 sides, whereas the machine gun feels like it's somewhere in the middle but doesn't excel at anything. So it's one of those that more than likely is going to be more of a niche type of support weapon at this point. But the anti-material rifle did get a buff to its durable damage up to 180 and now has the capability of dealing damage towards Chargers, Biotitans, Impalers, and Hulks, and this is going to give it even more viability against the Terminid. Hopefully this means this is dealing quite substantial damage, and especially if you're accurate with this, you'll be able to blow off some of that armor pretty easily, maybe at least within one magazine. But it also got its stagger force increased from 20 to 25, but that durable damage should mean that it's also popping through those bloaty bugs as well against the Terminid. So it was already a powerhouse against the automatons, now it's even better, but hopefully this means that it also is going to be extremely viable versus the Terminid. Now, we all knew that the Commando was going to get a nerf, but thankfully it didn't get too large of a nerf. Before, it was blowing up automaton fabricators in one shot. Now it will take 2 shots. Now I believe this means that it can also one-shot it if you shoot it into the vents, because fabricators now have a health bar, and over time, I guess, over sustained damage from rockets or certain damage sources, maybe even the laser cannon, you may be able to blow these up from any direction, but I'd imagine the vents on top are still going to be the ultimate weak spot that is the most effective way to take it down as quick as possible. And just after that, like I said before, Flamethrower now has damage increased by 33%, and with all the flame reworks back to what they originally were with burning through those chargers, it's going to be even more insane, and apparently it can deal damage towards Bile Titans as well now, and Impalers. Can't wait to just burn everything down again. This is going to be an absolute good time. I can't wait to test any of this out. And be sure to hit that link down in the description. Follow me over at Twitch. We'll be deep diving into all of these, testing it throughout the day, before we release all the results later on this evening. But just after that, the autocannon just couldn't get any better, but yet it still did, and it now deals damage towards Chargers, Bile Titans, Impalers, and Hulks. You just can't go wrong with this. It's an absolute S-tier chains, and it was already an S-tier support weapon before, but it just keeps going up. And one thing to key highlight before we move into some other things is the Thermite Grenade might be absolutely extremely powerful now. It does 2,000 damage instead of 100, shorter time until it ignites the thermite, and time to explode is slightly reduced, and the max number got decreased to 3, probably because 2,000 damage is going to be destroying a whole lot of different enemies, and if you can perfectly arc that through into possibly a Bile Titan's face, I'd imagine one thermite's just going to be able to just, it's like set it and forget it. Just walk away, that thing just blows up, it's gone. You're done with that Bile Titan. Now, last but not least, we're going to just talk about the stratagem changes, as there's a whole lot of other changes when it came down to the functions in the entire game, but the number one thing that a lot of people are just looking for is what were the changes to the primary weapons, the support weapons, and stratagems. And now for the final list, we've got the Eagle 500 kg bomb, explosive radius increased to match visuals better. Hopefully this means this thing is just going to be wiping the floor with a lot of things, but it may end up with a lot of reinforcements being called in, so it should be interesting. And the Eagle rockets, damage slightly increased. I love the rocket pods. If you've been on my channel for quite a while, you know I do have fancy for them, especially for blowing off the armor on the backside of a Bile Titan, but now they may be even more effective at taking down those Bile Titans. And just after that, we've got the heavy machine gun emplacement now has stagger increase from 20 to 25, but it also now damages Chargers, Bile Titans, Impalers, and Hulks. The heavy machine gun emplacement is probably going to be one of the most fun sentries in the entire game. I'm going to see so many people dropping this in, especially if it's just ripping through Chargers and Bile Titans. Everybody is going to have a good time with this one. Sentry builds are going to be very powerful, and I cannot wait to actually drop one in myself. On top of that, the Emancipator's exosuit has the autocannon's durable damage increased from 60 to 150, rate of fire in its weapons went from 125 to 175, and ammo increased to 100 per arm. So the Emancipator may be even more powerful than what it once was, and it may be something that is absolutely S tier for both sides of the fight as a mech. I can't wait to try this. More than likely this does enhance it a bit and give it a little bit more of that quality of life, since we only get 2 of them per match with a 10-minute cooldown. But hopefully these are the changes that were needed to really bring this in line for not only being fun, but being extremely effective. And orbital laser got damage increased, orbital rail cannon got increased, and sadly enough, we have to leave or end the video on what might be a pretty dramatic nerf, and I'm pretty upset about it, I'm going to be honest. I guess it had to happen with the patch notes. There had to be one nerf that I would just be like, you know what, this is garbage, I don't know why we did this. Orbital gas strike, they have reworked the gas gameplay mechanics to be more for crowd control. So now apparently the gas effect has been reworked to cause blindness and confuse enemies instead of having, you know, that increased damage over time that we had before, which felt pretty good. When you just drop one of these on top of a bug breach, it felt like it was really chewing through some of those crowds and then dealing damage towards some of those heavier type of enemies and just softening them up for you. Now, blindness and confusion for both the enemies and for the Helldiver, I don't know. I'm a little bit disappointed on this. I hate to end the video on this last thing. Like, here's the one nerf that's come out of this. Hopefully this doesn't completely destroy orbital gas strike. We'll be testing this out, you know, shortly after this. But, you know, with a full gas Warbond coming in, guys. Don't play the same repeat you did last time with the flames and then have to rework this later on and be like, oh, we're sorry, let's change it back, because that's what everybody wants. They don't want blindness and confusion. They want this to be an absolute crowd control, just poison gas burning through those enemies and just ripping them, just causing them to just keep falling over, not blindness and confusion. But hopefully there's some comicalness to the blindness and confusion, and the reduction of damage over time hopefully is not as severe as I'm possibly assuming. With that being said, that's pretty much everything that's key highlighted from the patch notes. If you'd like to, basically get a deeper dive on some of these, hit that subscribe button. We'll be testing out every one of the patch notes throughout the entire day. And if you'd like to see some of this content live, hit that link down in the description below. We'll be streaming this throughout the day, testing out each one of these. And if you have any questions, by all means, come in, ask away, and I'll be free to answer it. But let me know down in the comments below what you're most excited about with these patch notes and what you're most excited to try out yourself. And on that note, have a good one.